Welcome to another episode of I Start First podcast. And today we're talking about something very important, but something a lot of business owners shy away from. And I'm talking about the legal foundation for your business. And I couldn't think of anyone better who makes it sound so normal. She's going to teach you all these simple tools, strategies, and resources that you need to make sure that you stay on the right side of things. So, listen in, tune in to hear from my friend and incredible boss diva, Lauren Ruiz. Hi, loves. Welcome to I Start First podcast, the show for boss babes who start ideas, businesses, dreams, and lifestyle. I'm your host, Alenka Cullinan, founder of I Start First, speaker, author, and business coach, aka Queen of Pushing Boss Babes Off the Ledge. On this show, I chat with epic humans who are guaranteed to uplevel your business and mindset. Are you ready to sparkle up? Let's go. Hello, ladies, and welcome to another episode of I Start First podcast. And today we're getting all prim and proper. We're going to talk about one important thing that we often overlook when we run a business, and that's the legal side of it. And I couldn't think of anyone better to bring on board than our local boss diva. And by local, I mean for me, because I live in Phoenix, Arizona, and we happen to share the same city. So for those of you listening outside of it, she's going to be your phone friend, your online friend, but she's an incredible attorney. She serves so many small businesses from the heart, and I'm really, really excited to have her with us. Welcome, Lauren Ruiz.
Hi, I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Of course. Well, you and I know your story a little bit, but for ladies listening, they don't. And they may have snooped on your Instagram or maybe have seen your website. But I do want to tell, I want you to kind of tell them more of your story. How did it happen that you really became such a heart-centered attorney and started focusing on small business?
Yeah, I think it's a conversation that needs to happen more often. That, some of these more professional careers have really become, I would say, more driven by the numbers and the status. And I just don't think that that's the way we're growing. I was in corporate law for over 3 years, and I loved every minute of it. I was very lucky to work in a largely female law department. I traveled internationally. I got to, negotiate large contracts, really enjoyed my time spent there. But at the end of the day, I was raised in an entrepreneurial family, and I saw how hard a small business owner works. And I see how legal can really, truly affect their success. And I started to think there just has to be a better way than supporting corporate law. I wanted to support my local community and really get invested in my neighborhood. And I was commuting to work to hop on Skype calls, and I wasn't having that face-to-face connection that I was really longing for. And I think the heart-centered really comes easily when you're working with people in your community that are doing amazing things.
I love it. It's so, so true. And honestly, but you also have given, just now, by saying what you said, you have given so many women, I think, who may have been considering or are considering law at some point, you have given them a completely different perspective. Because traditionally, a lot of times when they think of legal field, they think of that big firm, you're one of X amount of number of attorneys, and you kind of sell yourself into that, corporate product, but you are changing it out completely. You are saying, you know what, you can pretty much make the rules. You're making your community and you're working with them. Is that the case?
Absolutely. I think that's always been my personality. Maybe call me stubborn, but I was actually a finance major, and I have an entrepreneurship degree as well. And that's really what led me to law. So I think having the foundation in business and knowing that I wanted to grow into law and serve my community in a different way allowed me to really kind of stay true. Law was never, to be really frank, was never my vision. I didn't envision this. I envisioned owning my own business. I envisioned something that would be helping my community. I just didn't know what that was going to be. Mm-hmm. And for me, law was a vehicle to do that.
Yeah.
So when I went into law school, I actually really focused on the courses that interested me and that were true to my vision for my career. Some people kill it at big law, and I think that's amazing. If that is, what their journey is going to be, that's fantastic. But that's not the only way anymore. And I will say that law schools and firms are not very supportive of that break of tradition. And I think it just comes from owning what your purpose really is and being passionate in pursuing that.
I love it. I love it. Yes. Owning your purpose. I mean, we talk about that in business all the time. I think you are at a huge advantage, obviously, because you, like you said, you understand what it takes to build a business. You do have entrepreneurship degree. You have seen small business owners, struggle and really the sweat equity they put into that. So for you to pivot like that and really support them is super admirable. And that's why obviously you're here, because I love everything you stand for. And a lot of, listeners in my community specifically, and I start First Try by newbies. So they're beginner businesses. So can you give them some advice, some tips, perhaps what they need to focus on? Like, I know specifically in the state of Arizona, we just recently had some changes regarding the LLCs, and just kind of like the basics for any small business owner that they need to focus on. Because I mean, myself included, we often it's not really hurting me, so I'm not going to touch it, but it's really a wrong mentality.
Right. And I think that's true. So what I like to really, put out into the world is that it's a holistic approach to your business. And that the more proactive you are, the more more strategy driven results that you're going to get. And that's true in legal as well. Legal is not only about when you're in trouble, but it's about really setting yourself up for success and having a strong legal foundation. So, of course, that starts from the beginning. And I always like to tell people, when they're starting, some business may be very successful and haven't really laid the foundation, might have to go back and do it. And that's okay too. When you're ready is the time. It's really going to be different for everyone. Of course, there's the ideal case that you're thinking about starting a business and you call your accountant and your lawyer and you get them on the team. But in reality, that's not how it really works.
Yeah.
And so giving yourself a little bit of grace to realize that not everything has to happen at once and to take it in stages. So first, of course, we start a passion project, for example, with our friend, and it starts making money and we go, oh my gosh, we better get a website. We start to think of all of those items, but what you should be thinking about is how do you protect the relationships that you're making? So in the instance of, starting a business with your friend, you should actually put in place an operating agreement. Lay the foundation so that there's not any question marks later of who owns what, who invested what amount. If you ever need to make a big, scary investment financially into your business, is there a cap on that so that you don't actually, say we need $10,000 and, one of the members is ready to do it and the other says, I wasn't budgeting for that.
Yeah.
So you want to make sure that you're setting a really nice baseline so that relationship as founders succeeds.
Oh
now,
God, I just want to jump in because if they're listening, oh my God, I mean, you're literally ladies, she's giving you like $10,000 training, definitely $10,000 advice right here. So please take notes, make sure you really pay attention because that happens all the time. I mean, bunch of girlfriends, especially I feel like with women, we're so nurturing, we're so loving. We want to support each other. We want to help each other. So, it's so easy to jump in before you make money. And everybody's friendly and exciting. But then the minute the money starts coming in, that's what kind of all kinds of problems happen. And not because you don't love each other and you don't want to support each other, but it's just because it becomes a very different relationship. Now you have to budget and, allocate funds and you have spending and you have all kinds of things and profit, which everybody loves. But that's where all types of issues start coming in. So save your friendships. Listen to what Laura... Yeah,
exactly. Save your friendship. I feel like that is, they say, I don't want to get too formal with my friends. I would really argue that it should be the other. If you value your friendships and you want them to succeed past the start, the end, the sell, the growth of a business in all stages, having a clear baseline, it really does enforce you to go out and get a budget, what
Yes.
amount of money do we think we might need to invest
Yeah.
into this business this year? And really kind of just go through, for example, one of the questions I love to ask people is, I have to think of all the unfortunate situations. So for example, for our married ladies out there that are starting a business with a friend of theirs, would you want your friend's spouse to step in if something ever happened to your friend and help you run the business?
Mm,
Oftentimes I will say, like, we may love our best friend's, life partner, but we may not want to do business with them.
that's
And so
right.
that's another question that, you have to kind of work through. And I think having those open conversations is just like a marriage. It's a business marriage. You
Yep.
need to get in on the nitty gritty and like what the expectations are, what the finance projections are going to look like, and how you see this growing over time. And
Yeah.
so I think that's a good way to set you up for success. That does lead me to a kind of a comment on, I think everyone mixes up operating agreement versus articles of organization and kind of the different documents. So, for example, in Arizona, if you want to go form an LLC, you will go onto their website and you can actually create your articles of organization directly on the website, which is really driven by who the members are, what the address is, what the purpose of your business is, and kind of like the more surface level questions. And then you will have an articles of incorporation or articles of organization, depending on kind of what business entity you're selecting.
Mm-hmm.
And the operating agreement is actually the heart of how your business is going to run day to day. So file for an LLC, think of that as a surface level document. For example, if you're a single, business owner, it's just you. You don't need an operating agreement. You don't need to make an agreement between yourself on how much you're going to spend. That might be your accountant's question for you,
Yeah.
but you don't need to set out some of the formalities of a relationship. You just need to go ahead and file your articles of organization. In Arizona, it's $50, a one-time fee. And the value of having a separate entity is just that you're creating separation between your personal entity and your business entity. And that's really going to reduce the liability on your personal assets as you move into, business pursuits.
Mm-hmm. I love it. No, so good. I mean, it's all of this are just such great points because, yeah, we don't think about all this, like you said, unfortunate situations. It's just like marriage. When we set off, we all want to be excited and we hope it lasts. And obviously, the goal is this is it. This is your baby. You're bringing it out in the world. You're going to have it forever. But you're absolutely correct. All types of unfortunate situations happen. What do you think are sort of like the biggest struggles you see when you work with small business owners in terms of like legal documents or just dealing with legal situations? What are some most kind of common cases that you've come across?
I would say, really starts with starting to build out a toolbox of these different tools that are going to help you drive those different relationships. So we've already touched on your partnership, if you have one, but you're going to have to think about the other business relationships that you're making. A lot of times, the first stage is independent contractors. So before we bring in employees, we often grow by farming out, the other areas of our business to somebody else's strengths. And that's often an independent contractor. And so I think having an agreement that lays out kind of the scope of work, the deadlines, the expectations, the payment, and then some of the nitty gritty stuff like confidentiality. And are they interacting with your clients? Do you need, some kind of non-compete in there? I would say some of those things are often overlooked, but very important. And we all know that branding is so important these
Yeah.
days. Intellectual property clause. So if you're farming out some of your marketing, for example, and you're sending them your logo and your fonts and all of your information to pump out into the world, you need to know how that's going to be used. If you're hiring a brand photographer, do you own the images that they're taking pictures of? Do they own the images? Generally, I would say the rule of thumb is that when you hire someone to do work or create branding, create really any work, the business should own it because it's called a work made for hire. It's kind of a concept that's well established in intellectual property law here in the US, but I think sometimes often overlooked. It sounds scary to people. There's a concept of ownership and licensing, and at the heart of it, it's very simple.
Yeah.
Whoever is hiring out work to create content should own that content. The independent contractor may or may not get a license to promote that content as, hey, look at my portfolio. I've worked with, you know, this list of businesses. But in order for them to be promoting that list of businesses, they actually have to have a license to use that intellectual property, those logos, the business name on their website. You can't just do it just merely because you've worked with those people. So being a lot more protective of those relationships, I think in the world and realm of social media, we've gotten used to reposting or sharing and kind of bringing people along with the journey. But we do also really have to honor people's brands. And they've spent years and money and all this time to develop those brands. And, you know, not only for you or for the people you work with, protecting that is very important.
Yeah, no, such great points. And you're so right. You know, we're so freely using and reusing everything on social media. And I mean, it's great, but we also become so almost careless kind of to a degree. And, you know, we send things and we start working with people purely based on social media relationships, right? It used to be the yellow pages, and then we used to get referrals. And now it's so easy to just go strike conversation on social media. And before you know it, you seems like you're aligning and you jump into relationships. But again, you don't know what's happening. And if you've never worked with that particular person, it can unfortunately turn out pretty sad. And yes, we don't want to think about it that way, but it's just there has to be there has to be trust, and there has to be legal trust for everybody to feel good and to be protected.
Absolutely. And I think the more that we work, like you were saying, cross borders, we're finding, you know, our communities, and they're not just, like you said, they're not just here in Phoenix. They really are, you know, in New Jersey or Texas or, you know, Washington. I mean, really, you can have business partners and people that are on the journey with you that are across states, and that brings in some additional complications. Like in the case of a dispute, how are you going to handle it? You know, there's so many ways to think about handling it. You know, a lot of times I like to say that you should have a clause in there that suggests you work it out internally first. So there's a required amount of meetings between, you know, the business leaders and executive teams to get together and try to resolve an issue. And then some businesses really prefer mediation or arbitration as opposed to jumping into litigation, because as we move into a space of litigation and arbitration, you start to realize that that person in New Jersey, if they bring a claim in New Jersey, that expense to defend something across state borders gets very expensive. So how do we create the best set of expectations to hopefully ever prevent any of this from happening, and clear guidelines and steps for dispute resolution, so that you aren't defending something in court or trying to find an attorney in someone else's state to defend yourself?
Yeah, no, it's such great, such great observations. And obviously all, like I said, all the facts that business owners necessarily don't want to think about. And that's why we have you. What do you think? I mean, outside of finance, which is pretty obvious, a lot of times I feel like it's a pretty obvious barrier to why a lot of, you know, sort of starting business owners shy away from getting appropriate legal advice. I mean, we are going to, I think, touch base on the whole download the contract from the internet, which, you know, it is not ideal, but we obviously all know people do that. And I mean, I definitely want to hear your take on that. And I mean, the dangers really of doing that, because it's pretty crazy sometimes what people do. But what do you think are some barriers or maybe some stigmas of why small business owners in particular avoid going to get proper legal help?
I think sometimes it can be your own internal fears, that you're afraid to tell someone you just don't know. You know, I'm not sure I'm doing this right. That's a very vulnerable place to be. And I think in the realm of traditional law, you know, at this point, are you going to call up a big law firm and, you know, say, who, you know, this is my problem, who can I talk to? And be that, you know, that's just another layer of vulnerability. And you don't have a personal relationship. So I think what we're seeing is a lot of solo practitioners really getting their voice out there and saying, you'll know me. When you call me, I'll answer. And I think that is really helping break down that initial barrier, because I know I would feel that way about calling an accountant. Am I just going to Google someone and be like, well, sure, I guess I'll give them a call and then I'm
Yeah.
going to tell them all of my money woes of, you
Yeah.
know, here, dig into my books. I just don't think so. I think
Yeah.
really it's a lot about building trust and building that relationship before the person ever needs you. And maybe hopefully, spurring some thoughts on things that they can do to be proactive, I
Yeah.
think are really helpful. So yes, and then finances, of course, are a barrier to entry. They're a barrier to entry for all of us. And again, I would urge your audience to really look for solo practitioners that live in their local area that they can reach out to, because often they're changing the way it's done. Big
Mm.
law firms round their time. So they think about you for 3 minutes, you actually pay for six. They do minimum time intervals, and that will really add up to your bill. There's a little bit less transparency sometimes. I know they're all striving to be better, but they've got big staff and a big office and a lot more overhead. So finding someone that aligns with your, goals, I think is going to be very helpful, even financially, because you'll find someone who's transparent, who's running a low overhead, that might be more budget conscious for you. And I think that that's a really good opportunity for people to get someone that's going to be that support system for them, which again kind of brings to light the conversation about templates.
Mm.
You can absolutely, I understand. I mean, and I think that's the other reason about having a solo practitioner. I get how many hats a small business owner is wearing, because I am wearing them all too. I am on the journey with you.
Yeah.
And I understand that there's give and take, and that, we have to build into investments. And so if you start with, a template off of LegalZoom, there is nothing wrong with that. I think, everyone has to start somewhere. And just like marketing or, a lease or employees or independent contractors, everything has a price. And it has to be when the investment is the right time for you. So if starting at, LegalZoom, getting a document is kind of where you're at, that's okay. The question marks, of course, are, I think we are shifting to a place where people just wanted content in the past. And now they're really shifting back towards wanting relationships and support, because it's hard to be a business owner. It can be lonely. I know just before we started this, I was saying like I had to kick out my business partner, my four-legged friend from my office,
Yeah.
because that's what my day looks like today. I'm in the office, heavy into my work, and I don't have someone there to kind of hold my hand, and that's what oftentimes some of these independent contractors, your lawyers, your accountant can be.
Mm-hmm.
Your friend that just holds you accountable. It's about creating a system of support. And when you're downloading documents, you don't get that support. You get a 1-800 number. And I don't know about everyone else, but I dread a 1-800 number. And so, I think it's about, and I always like to tell people, start there. Start somewhere. Don't handshake anymore. If you need to download a contract, that's fine. But just know you've invested a lot of time, money, and effort into creating your brand. And you have a very unique way that you speak to your clients and customers, and the kind of the vision you want to put out into the world. And that doesn't stop at your website. It really should be something so internal that it really goes into your contracts as well.
Yeah, no, all about this. And I'm going to assume you don't have a 1-800 number.
I don't. It's my cell phone. The same number my mom calls me on.
Yes. And you see, and that's such a huge shift. And I am so glad you brought it up is yes, absolutely. I feel just because we have so much social media and so much screen time that people are really starting to crave connection again, relationship again. They want to have the conversation, not just, the screenshot or, like you said, an automated line. And that's where, yes, finding that solo practitioner, having someone in your corner, even if it's simply to have a conversation, and maybe you can't quite afford to have them, bill you out on everything you wish you could have, but start with a simple conversation. You can do a 30-minute consultation or an hour consultation where you go in and at least, cover your basics. Maybe they won't draft your documents, but at least they'll give you ideas of what you need. And, you brought up a really good point earlier where you said, it feels like when we start it's that holistic approach, because when start a business, we go immediately for the website, and I want all the pretty things, right? All the sexy things, all the shallow outer shell things that everybody's going to see. But the reality, it's no different than building a house. And if you build a house on a, zero foundation or poor foundation, we all know that's going to at some point catch up with you. And at some point, you're really dealing with a lot bigger issues than just simple decisions if you sit down and talk through all the things that you need to cover before you jump into that. So it's so, so important, ladies. Lauren has given away some really great points for you at any stage of your business. And don't feel just because even if you're a couple years into the business and you never done that, you can start today. You don't have to wait for some special moment. And if you needed to wait, we're both giving you permission. This is it. Today is the day. You absolutely can start on that. And, when you work with your clients, I'm sure you get in a lot of referrals, Lauren, just because the way you are and the way you operate your business. What are some favorite things that, what are your favorite aspects? Yes, it gets tough, it gets lonely. We all know that part. What are some favorite things about, supporting small businesses?
Well, just before we started, recording, we were talking about we're planning our wedding. And I think it's really about, for me, it may be different for other people. It's about building relationships and the longevity of those relationships. Because I think as a small business owner, I think anyone can relate that you get really ingrained in your community and really see everything amazing that people are out there doing. So for us, being able to, find a photographer was not hard for our wedding. Someone that is going to do dessert at our wedding, someone who's going to be our florist. They were all personal touch points that I had made through my business and was able to return the favor, become their client. I got my wedding dress from a client of mine. Yeah. There's just unique opportunities to really invest in one another. And I think that's really why I'm doing this.
I love it.
I really enjoy it. And I think if you find someone who enjoys it, and is passionate about their clients and is passionate about the relationship, I think you're going to find that you feel a lot more supported, that, they're in it for your success and your objectives. And they will tell you, like I have told clients, that sounds great, but let me save you money. Why don't you do this? Let me send you some instruction on how you can move this forward. Like, for example, registering LLCs. I don't do that because I really believe I can send you some information, empower you to do it yourself. And same with negotiations. I really work on empowering my clients to be the forward facing to their clients and work on building those relationships, understanding the legal ramifications of any of the decisions that they're making. And I'll do the drafting work on the back end, but I am not the face of that negotiation. They are. And not only does it save them money, but it empowers them to learn more about their business.
I love it.
Find someone that is going to work on empowering you and not scaring you away from some of these things, because I get it. They can be heavy topics, but they can all be fixed.
I love it. So true. And I mean, I actually want to bring up the whole reason you and I met, right? We met at both of our clients, Lana's grand opening. And for me, it was so incredible to see her business go from an idea and going through a boot camp with I Start First and then launching it. And you were there holding her hand to make this business in reality. So seeing that and seeing those moments, I mean, it's so incredibly exciting and touching and so awesome, because you literally see this business is going to life and you were the backbone of that process. So yeah, it was super awesome. And I completely relate to what you said. It's truly finding about people who empower you, people who sort of essentially have your back, like you have your clients back. That's why I love, like I said, the way you present yourself, the way you have these conversations. You make it very simple. You make it very, understandable. It becomes a conversation. It becomes something that is just part of the process of building your business versus some big untouchable crazy scary thing that makes you intimidated and you don't even want to go there. So thank you for doing that. I mean, I admire this so much. And I know there are women out there listening to the podcast, listening to this episode, and maybe some of them are in law field, and now you gave them a whole new perspective on what can be done. So if there is a boss babe out there who wants to be just like Lauren and wants to take that leap and say, you know what, corporate is not for me, what would be one advice you would give her?
Well, first off, make sure that you have a foundation of someone that's going to be there to support you. I did not make this decision alone, and leaving corporate can be scary. So, of course, have some money in the bank, make sure that you feel financially secure. I know I made sure my 401k was vested before I left and pulled the trigger, but I would say find a way to get out of your bubble and challenge yourself, because that will probably be the biggest resource for you going forward. My number one thing was finding a community and a home here outside of my corporate bubble. And I think that's what I would challenge them to do the same. And find a community of, it needs to be a diverse community, a community that has all these powers different from yours, so that you can really lean into each other. And then it also needs to be an aligned community, a community that's going to be exact same things that you are. And I think having both will really set you up for success.
I love it. So good. Thank you. Seriously. I mean, I literally, ladies, I could talk to Lauren for hours. I know you could listen to her for hours. So we will put all her contacts into the show notes. So make sure to check her out. Make sure you reach out. Like I said, I loved her the minute I met her because of that, because there are so few attorneys whom I have met who made me feel normal and welcome and excited. And I felt like she was in my corner from the very first conversation we've had. So it is absolutely awesome. They do exist, ladies. They do exist. Lauren is our own unicorn. So, Lauren, thank you so much for giving us your time, giving this priceless advice to all the ladies listening. And, I loved having you. Thank you.
Perfect. And I do want to tell your community, for more, please follow along on social media. I really do try to put out some really good content on there that even if you don't live here in Arizona, that can help you take small steps each day to really move your business forward and make sure that you feel secure.
Oh, I love it. Awesome. Awesome. And we will, like I said, we'll have it into show notes. So you'll be able to stalk Lauren secretly and reach out to her. And yes, absolutely. She does have incredible profile, which is super valuable and really great bite-sized pieces of information. Thank you all for listening.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for listening to I Start First podcast. If you loved it as much as I did, feel free to tag us on Instagram at IStartFirst_. Share it with your besties, and if you feel so compelled, give us that 5-star review on iTunes. Till next time, and like always, kick ass and sparkle up.